I mean, we can ask ourselves questions, but if anybody's dying to ask something, we'll start with the... So, Mark, tell us, how did you get into the industry? Tell us your story.
Aren't there questions?
There's no questions yet. We got to warm them up.
Question.
Oh, okay, he's got one. See, you saved us.
Okay, I might as well go ahead and ask it. I've already asked you this question before, but I haven't heard the answer from you.
Okay.
What is the most awkward thing y'all have done in your profession?
Okay, so this is Awkward Guy, and he asks, what is the most awkward thing you've done in your profession?
Really great answer.
Actually, we'll start with Chad, because that's... Jeez.
This panel.
Okay, we're done.
I don't know if this is on or not.
Yeah, it's
you hear
on.
it?
Yeah, I'm hearing it, man.
Okay.
You're in stereo now.
Gosh, I don't. It's the most awkward thing. I don't think I've had anything really awkward.
You can turn into a funny story.
We went to on Doom. We went to a junkyard to do Foley recording. We wanted to get some metal impacts, and I had called around several places, and nobody would let us come because of insurance. They were like, "Nah, you can't come out and record stuff." But finally, because we're in Texas, I got like this backwoods junkyard, and they're like, "You want to do what?" And I was like, "Just come out and record some metal." And they're like, "Whatever." I was like, "Okay." So we showed up, and there are these three guys that were, pretty Texas, and they were looking at us like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And I don't know. I was like, "So should we get some hard hats or something?" And they're like, "No, just don't walk under anything that'll kill you." And they gave us free reign. We could go anywhere and do anything and just record. There's like piles of dangerous material everywhere, and we're like climbing on it, hitting things. And they're just watching us like, "What are these idiots doing?" That was a little goofy. That happened on Doom, and then there was this giant like thick metal gear, and I really wanted it. I was like, "Oh, I want to get this thing," and it was like ridiculously hot because Texas is ridiculously hot. And so I went up to one of the guys and I said, "Hey, how much for this gear?" And he's like, "You could just have that gear." I was like, "Oh, great! You have like a cart or something because it's pretty heavy and it's really hot." And he just grabbed it and carried it to the front, and he's like, "Where do you want it?" And I was like, "In my car." And he like threw it in my car, and I'm like, "Thanks, man." I'm like, that must have scalded his hand because it was ridiculous. Anyhow, that's not a very good story, but
Or you're a
there
big
you
wuss,
go.
is I think was what he was telling you.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think he was
Man
definitely
up.
telling us that.
Yeah.
But we got some pretty cool sounds out of that session.
Cool.
That's my boring story.
Any cool videos?
We didn't record any
Oh,
video. so
man.
we're gonna document more in the future.
You got an awkward...
I have a lot. All right, Just Cause 3. I was hired to record various vehicle sounds. And one time I was recording a 60-foot yacht. And you ever been seasick? I've never been seasick, but I was sick on that boat. We had the engine door open. It's one of those large yachts where you could walk into the engine room and stand. And so we had kept the door open because I didn't want to fry my microphone. So I had a mic down there and a mic in other places. I think 7 microphones going at the same time. And I think it's because it's a 3-tier. It was swaying a lot. And where I was standing with the recorders, I had the diesel fumes going right there, and the boat was swaying. So I would hit record and point at the owner to do his thing. You would do various runs, different RPMs. So I hit record and run to the side and did my silent puking. So I made sure I ran to the side with the least microphones. And I was worried the whole time, and I was feeling horrible. The guy said, "You look green," and but I did a good job. I went back to the studio and played back my files and did not hear any puking sounds, none whatsoever. So, but you got to do what you love to do. Even though you might be sick and just dying, but it worked out. If you play the game and it's you didn't hear any puking, that's great.
I have 2. Sorry. personal embarrassment, I was with these two actually in Florida recently and fired a Chris Vector for the first time in my life, fully automatic, and I almost knocked myself over because I wasn't quite prepared for that. What is it, 1,200 rounds a minute at 45? Yeah.
30 rounds of 45 big bore.
There's a video of me, like, kind of almost falling, yeah. But no, the most awkward for sure was I worked on an ill-fated Leisure Suit Larry title, true story, and we had strippers that we had hired for mocap, and we were recording some voice stuff for them. That was really awkward. It was actual real. Hey,
What's the direction on that?
if you're gonna mocap strippers, you're gonna hire real strippers. Ron Jeremy came to a party. Anyway, that was a whole. That's it. But strippers making noises.
Nice. So he's probably alluded to my answer last year, which was for this game, Kingdom Under Fire, which is a Korean, I think it was a hack and slash game. But one of the sounds, the description for it was, I don't remember, it was some kind of creature sound we had to do, was, can you give us the sound of the blood flowing through a pregnant woman's womb?
Hydrophonic microphone.
Hydrophonic contact mics on the womb. You got to get your wife pregnant first, and then you got to wait a little while. Yeah.
That's how you do it.
So yeah, that was kind of awkward, but not really. Yeah. More questions. Let's go over here. Green shirt guy.
Sure, guys. My name's Tyler. I'm a composer and graduate student at the University of Georgia. Being in academics, they don't really talk about the video game industry that much for us composers out there. So one thing I'm just kind of curious about, especially trying to get into the industry, is for the actual resume. I remember you talking, Chris. You were talking about this a little bit in the last section you were doing the questions. What are things then you would want to see or not see on a composer's resume for writing music for video games?
Do you want to? These guys probably know
Yeah.
better. These guys hire.
So Chris is a composer.
Yeah.
So what do I?
What do I put on my demo?
A big thing.
Sorry, for me, a huge thing with composers is, I've seen it even with composers who've done a bunch of video games, they don't quite understand how dynamic music systems work. If you want to do any kind of dynamic music system, so a cursory understanding, I think, of what really Wise, and I'm like, if anyone asks any more questions, you'll realize I'm a huge Wise fanboy. But learning how to create music for dynamic music systems, stems, things that can transition easily from one thing to another, and honestly, even digging in that tool a little bit to understand how we need to put that together, that's a huge thing for me. Like, just a linear passive music is really often not that helpful. If I want to do dynamic music, having a composer who understands that is awesome. I got to do a game where Jeff Beal did the music for it. He's like the Rome House of Cards composer guy. And he had never done games, but he was really interested in how to do it. We talked about it quite a bit. And he gave me these just amazing stems that would all work together. So he was like, you can bring in different stems with different enemies. You can bring in different stems with different intensities, and it all works together, but it also works separate. So he got that right away. That for me, that's exciting as a game sound designer, to work with a composer who understands the idea of, I'm going to make all these things that can work together or work alone, and kind of collaborate with the sound designer on that.
What do you?
I think early on, when I was in college, and I had to write a lot of music for assignments, and I know a lot of composers get offended. Hey, can you change this section? It's horrible, and you get offended. You don't want to be like that. You want to be able to change the direction of music, just like that. All right, you might say, you can't do that. That's my baby. You can't change my baby. This is writing for somebody, work for hire. So you got to do what you're told. All right. So I remember one of my first game jobs was writing music, and it was a music puzzle. So I had to do different stems, a lot of changes, key changes, things like that. So you got to be able to be flexible and learn how to transition to different stems. and do it, without complaining and enjoy it. So that's the thing. So what your question is? When I see a resume that says I can do all these styles, and they name like 20 different styles, very few people can do that, right? You might have one composer that could do 3 to 4 styles at the most, really well. All right, so I can't see John Williams doing dubstep. Just can't do that. All right, so you got to choose what you like and stick to those. All right. Somebody asked me a while ago, "Can you do these bluegrass country?" And I flat out said no. I'm not going to do what I don't like. All right.
I said yes to that gig and I got it. So
You can have it.
I will say it's. I kind of talked about this at that talk. The way that demoing happens in the game industry now, anyway, there's a lot less of like, here's my general demo, hire me kind of thing. It's more of like the developers almost already know who they want to work with, or at least have like their top 3 or 5, and then they'll go solicit those guys and say, hey, we're working on this game. This is what it is. Give us your demo. And a lot of them will even be pretty detailed and like, here's the 3 factions. We want this to be used in a trailer, and then we want one track that's going to be in-game, and then we want that like ultimate moment, and give us 2 minutes of each of that. So you're almost don't even have to worry about your general demo, except that it should be awesome, and it should represent kind of what he was saying, that you are capable of doing certain styles very, very well. And that's just more of like, once you meet all these people, that's kind of like the minimum that you have to have is like, oh, well, let me go to his website. Oh yeah, he's got a lot of nice stuff. He's done some live orchestra. He's done some synth orchestra that sounds really good. And then he's done some really crazy, unique things. We really like that sound. We'll put him in the database or up here, and like, oh, whenever we need this crazy bluegrass music, this is going to be one of our first calls. So you almost have to think of it that way, less like my general demo is what's going to sell me. That's more of like, oh, I went to school, I have this demo, there's my body of work. Now let me find these audio directors and then like see what they're looking for, and then tailor your demo specifically for those projects, if that's what you want to do, and if those are the games that you would knock it out of the park. Because you're competing against Mick Gordon for Doom, which is amazing, and Jeff Beal, he's name dropping like Hollywood guys, and that's what you're competing against now, and it's tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's the bar is really high.
Jeff Beal charged less per minute than Chris. That's a true story.
Really? And I gotta say, you gotta love playing games. If you don't play games, you shouldn't be here. All right, don't think, oh, they make this much money. Let's go join it. You gotta like it. You gotta say to the developer, I like this game for this reason. All right, so you gotta re-enjoy it.
I mean, to piggyback on that, to be honest with you, for as long as I can remember, the most common resume you get, the most common thing you get at GDC, the most common thing you get everywhere is you'll get 30 composers to 1 or 2 sound designers. And so there are so many composers constantly inundating us with their reel. And almost none of them contain words like, dynamic music, stems, like, it's the jargon. Understanding how it's used in games is so huge. Like, if you give me a reel where you talk about, here's how I built a little dynamic music system, and I show you how I bring intensity up and down and it can happen, or anything that relates to kind of game design versus just straight composition, you're going to get my attention. Whereas I'll get, not exaggerating, honestly, 10 at least composers, like, just blind sending me stuff a month, at least.
The awkward thing now in my new role also is we've got you're not only competing with people just sending you stuff, because now I'm suddenly getting tons of stuff. Yeah. Everybody that I work with knows somebody that is a composer. And they're like, hey, my buddy is really good and wants to send you stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine, send it. But it's tricky. So there's a lot of competition.
And there's a lot of like big names, like TV show, especially TV show composition. People. other things are also picking up that work on the side and throwing their hat in that ring also. So to stand out and know games and to understand and want to engage on a game design level is a huge thing for me. So,
So this is going to go more into the technical and I guess political side of things and more for sound design. So when you start designing a sound, let's say for weapons, and you have like an idea for how that's going to work in the game, and then the programmer who's implementing that has a totally different idea about how that's going to work, how do you approach that?
I can give a really super real world example here. I say, Chris, he programs a lot of our sounds. I will buy you a beer if you'll please do this way. And then he does. No, I'm sorry, jumping in. You definitely have not just with programmers, but with the designer, whoever, or the artist. You'll have different visions of how something is going to work. Most often, I think sound has to support a good design. You know, that's my job. I look at it generally as I'm trying to support what they're doing. But if you're talking specifically implementation, if it's not functioning the way it needs to be totally honest, the people who gravitate towards doing gameplay programming, I guess I've been lucky. Like I've had a couple who haven't, like they'll be stubborn about it. But most people, if you can clearly explain your end goal and how you want it to happen, and you understand logic and flow, and you can talk to a programmer somewhat on their terms of just how to get from point A to point B, I've just not had that issue ever with a programmer saying, no, I'm not going to implement that this way.
So you actually didn't you ask this on Facebook? Was this about the looping versus single shot?
I did ask this.
So
Oh shit, we can talk really
so this is
about that.
so yeah. So this kind of goes to what he was saying about, like, if you know what you're talking about, you can convince them. One thing you could have brought up with them, or could still, is that if you're playing a multiplayer game and you have a single shot gun that's playing like over 500 RPM, that's the replication on that's going to drive the programmers crazy. Like they're going to be like, we can't play this multiplayer game if you're shooting the gun every 0.1 second. So if you could approach them with that, say like, here's the technical reason why we need to use a loop versus a single shot. That might have gone farther than like, I know what I'm talking about. We got to do loops because everybody else uses loops, which also isn't the case. Some people do use single shots, but that would be just a way to, knowing your colleagues and a little bit about what they do over just like what audio is, just a little bit about programming, a little about design, a little bit about environment, and be able to have those conversations where you kind of know what you're talking about. They might take you a little more seriously and say, okay, let's see what he's talking. We'll just try it, and if he's wrong, we'll rip it out. If not, then no harm, no foul.
I like to approach always with the end goal. Here's what I want to accomplish. So, look at that technique. That was beautiful. That was beautiful technique. Yeah. Here's the end goal. Here's what I want to accomplish. What is the best way for us to accomplish this? Not, you're an idiot. It's got to be looped. You might say that inside your head, but no. I mean, how can we come to this common goal that we want to do? Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, but
And if I'm going to
Hippie.
talk about that specific issue that I was talking about on Facebook, I'm lucky that the designer who was the head guy overruled the programmer in question.
Dangerous ground you're stepping
Yeah.
on. Buddy.
Now you're making
Whoever
enemies.
doesn't like you will screw you for the next 10 years.
blacklist. Yep.
How would you recommend starting in the sound industry?
Oh.
We've talked a bunch.
Who's an accident for me?
You want me to answer that? Or
Check. Do something.
this mic works, I think.
This mic works. Oh yeah, hear
I
me.
hear you.
That's
Works
cool.
around.
That's really neat. Mics are cool. All right, so I think the best way, obviously, is to play a lot of games, go to things like this that Chris is doing, meet people, be good at what you do. I think that's just a given. You have to be good. Practice your trade, your art, and a little bit of luck. Like when I got into the industry, it was, I think, a mixture of luck and hopefully talent and just research. So I was finishing my degree. I was studying music and photojournalism at Kent State University, and I knew I wanted to go into games because I loved video games, and I was already doing electronic music with the band called Twine that I do and releasing albums. And I was like, man, I want to do something more. I knew I didn't want to go into photojournalism. I liked it, but I liked more the artistic photography portion, but not necessarily the journalism portion. But anyhow, I was just online every day looking for stuff, and I finally found an entry-level sound designer position at a startup game company in Boulder, Colorado that was going to do an Xbox release title because the Xbox was coming out. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna apply for this. So I applied online, and I got a response from Heather, who was the audio director, who's a good friend of mine now. And she wrote me and she said, great, glad you're interested. Please send me a sound effects demo. Don't send me any of your music. I don't care about your music. We've got a composer. I was like, okay. And I was like, well, what's a good sound effects demo? So I went to gamasutra.com and just searched for sound effects demo because I had never done it. And I found an article, and this guy at the time said, make a soundscape, be creative, keep it under 5 minutes, and just make this immersive experience. And I was like, well, that's kind of what my music is, because I was sort of really into musique concrète and doing these recorded soundscapes. So I did it. I went around my house recording like bicycles and banging plates and all kinds of things, and I put it all together and created this like journey, like you were walking through this soundscape, and sent it off. And like 2 weeks later, I got a phone call, and or I got an email, and they said they wanted to do a phone interview. So I said, great, and did the phone interview, passed the phone interview, flew out to Colorado, had to take an audio test, which they asked me like the Nyquist theorem and stuff, and somehow I knew that, and I don't know why, but anyhow, so I passed the test. One of the hardest questions in the interview was, Heather was like, tell me your favorite joke, and I was like, oh my God, this is a total trick question. I'm going to fail. I think I forget what I told, but I told a joke, passed, and I got the job. Well, later, like years later, Heather told me, she goes, when you got the job, I had a box of demos like this big, and she's like, I'd been going through them for weeks listening to things, and they all sucked. And she's like, your disc was at the bottom of that box. But she's like, one night I was so pissed off, I dumped the box out on the floor. And she's like, then yours was on top, and I had put it on a bright red CDR. And she's like, so it caught my eye, and I just grabbed it first and put it in. And I was like, thank God, one that doesn't suck. And I was like, oh, awesome. That's great, Heather. So if she hadn't have been so pissed off and dumped that box out, I might not have got that job at that time. So I wouldn't be here. Who knows? But so luck, actually, there's a little bit of luck involved. It's the red CDs all the way.
No, I said there was no more CDs.
Well, this was a long time ago, so.
Sorry, Watson, or?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, sure. This is the Chris Rickwood session. That's why. May I?
Go ahead, please.
So how to get in? Are you in sound effects or in music?
I'm just looking around, seeing what will fit me if I decide to go into the games.
Okay.
industry.
So what do you do? What do you like?
I'm just starting college out this year. I'm actually a
Okay, but
sophomore.
music, sound effects,
I do
Both?
experiment around with music and sound effects.
both. Okay, all right. Usually you got to choose one, but sometimes you could do. Unless you're Chris Rickwood, you could do everything. All right. You just got to be, it's how badly do you want it, and it's about timing. How do you approach someone like Mark or Chad here? I got in from reading the magazine before the Xbox came out about these guys making a living writing music for games, and caught my attention. And then I was in a bookstore. I saw Aaron Mark's book, The Complete Guide to Game Audio, the first edition. I read it twice. I flew out to GDC E3 with my demos, business cards, and did the whole thing. And it wasn't until later on that I acquired work. I said, give me a chance. Let me prove that I can do these things. And so one after the other. And it took a while. It wasn't overnight. You just got to, get timing. You ask permission. I wouldn't just email somebody my demo. If you get bombarded, it's rude. It's like, it's too much. Unless you write the email very well. So I would ask permission first. May I send you a demo? And if you don't like it now, can I send you again the next quarter? Ask things like that. And usually they'll say, yeah. They're reasonable. They're not, bombarded. Because when you take your demos to the conventions, he's going to come back with bags of that stuff. It's going to sit in the corner.
Probably
Like,
not gonna come back with him, actually.
yeah,
I need to be totally honest.
you see, he won't even take it home. Some guys will, but
You'll get 50 CDs at GDC. Thank God now people are going to web links and stuff.
yeah. It's better to provide a link and say, I think this will work well for your game. And I really like this game, especially the third level, in the sewer. So something like that. Be specific and then show them why it will work well for that level. So, yeah, the sewer,
So I actually have a. Sorry. So I know anybody who was here last year, I have the same answer, really. I have a slightly different answer because we all came into the game industry at a very different time, I think, than right now. I say it over and over. I have never, still, and I've said it, I've asked for it, I think, every year at Siege for 3 years. I've said the best way to get into it, if you want to do audio, you can go download Unity, you can go download UE4, you can download anything. Wise has the whole Limbo project thing. You can recreate audio, learn how a game engine works, and learn how an audio engine works, and you can do it. There's step-by-step tutorials. Everything is there for you. You can go redo the sounds for Limbo and play that level. It's all out there right now for everybody to do. I've said it every year, and I've never, ever, ever, ever had someone apply for a job coming into audio and who said, here is my game audio work. Ever. I mean, that's the big difference that we didn't have. There was no game engine for us to recreate. We could take a video and recreate audio too. I mean, anybody out there now can go download Wise and literally redo a level in Limbo and come and say, hey, check it out. Here's my audio design on this level of Limbo, and I figured all of it out, implementation, creation, but literally have not. That's never happened, but it's right there. I mean, so.
Yeah, sorry. Also, these guys get really busy. They don't have time to look through 200 demos. Once you get to a certain point, you might become friends with other audio guys or programmers. You might have them speak for you. You may have, literally this week, you may have 15 minutes to listen to demos. So if you have somebody speak for you, who knows mutually, Mark or Chad or even Chris, I didn't mean that. Sorry. Disregard that. Cut that. Speak for you. So I've had that. I had that when I was trying to break into the film and TV as well. I met somebody who was in charge of, yes or no for new composers. So they knew that I knew this person. So they actually call and say, hey, what do you think of this guy Watson? I heard his demo. I liked it, but who is he? So my friend spoke up for me, and it worked out. All right. And that person was a big deal. So sometimes it takes that.
Well, we just hired a guy that Watson emailed me and said, hey, this guy's looking to kind of change up what he's doing. Super smart, awesome guy, great to work with. And he turned in his demo. This is a great. Sorry, I'm gonna soapbox. This is a great example. He was like, hey, what can I send you for work examples? And I said, you know what? Honestly, here's like 2 trailers that I just did. Just you can take a section, even just a tiny bit of it, and do your thing on top of it. Strip the audio out, and he turned in a trailer that I had just done that was considerably better than what I had just done. And then I hired him. I mean, that's huge too. Like give me my thing back, like my game back. Do something I've done and do it better than I did. Not all of us are super overloaded with work most of the time, to be honest with you. We're really excited to meet somebody who can just do it. I mean, there is very little. It's not like people are trying to protect things, but we do get a million composers and no sound designers.
And Ryan, they just hired, also knows tools.
Yes.
Ryan knows tools. He loves them. Yeah, exactly. So he likes what he does, and I've hired him for a few projects. Just great. So without doubt, I say, hey, you need to hire this guy. Right.
Are you good? You in the industry? Cool.
You finally got the mic back.
Yeah. I'll give you my take. You're in school. Find other people in school now that are game developers, programmers, or making a game and do their sound.
Main shit.
Because that's your future collaborations right there, are those guys in school that I'll never work for because I'm like over 40 and they'll never hire me. It's ageism, but it's real. It's real.
It's in your mind.
But no, seriously, like those are the people you're going to grow with. Like I came in the industry with Watson. Like we both kind of, like Aaron didn't have a book out. I'm on page 34 of that book he's talking about, just because I knew Aaron and he was, yeah. Well, I have to. That's my selling point. Is I'm in the book, I'm in the audiobook. But that's a good question.
The book.
You've done one, so we're going to the back. Yeah.
I'm curious about how much, as far as copyright goes, how much ownership you maintain over your work when you're doing sound or music for a company. Like if you write some dynamic music and then you say, hey, I really like this melody, I'm doing an album on the side, I want to use it in this, or I want to do something similar. Could they say, hey, you can't do that, this is our music?
Correct. It depends on your deal. So for the most part, when you're working for a game company, it's going to be a work for hire contract, which means they own it all. They own the copyright. They own anything that you turn into them. You could make a deal where you're just licensing them music. If it's music, sound, probably not. It's probably just going to be a work for hire. But music, you could say, I'm going to license you this. It'll be a little cheaper, and maybe it's exclusive for 5 years. I won't put in any other games, but I still own it. Every soundtrack that I put out on it is mine, and I get 100% on that. You could also do a work for hire with an ancillary right clause in it that says, all right, I'm doing the soundtrack, you own the IP, you own all the music, but if you use any of that music outside of the game for like soundtrack sales, or if they license it to other things like movie trailers, you can then ask for a cut of that. I usually ask for 50%.
From really generous.
For really generous companies, they'll do that,
Really generous
and they'll give you a
companies,
50% split. 50%
Really?
split
50%?
on all ancillary rights.
The contract's been.
It's printed and signed. So there's different deals. For the most part, you're going to find it's work for hire. Everyone here in town pretty much does work for hire. Like if you do Turner, like they kind of own your kids too. So it's, but it varies from company to company.
This is streaming live. We're near
They know it. Turner's watching like,
I
yep.
have to take a quick. There's a thing. Remember we talked about taking care of programmers and making them really happy, and they do things for you. I can see.
Do you guys have anything to add to the? Is that how your deals work? They're all work for hire. Bethesda owns everything.
Very strict about owning everything, and even a lot of times you'll own, you'll buy a piece of music for one project, but we own it for anything we want to use it for forever, and they're very clear about that. And we're very limited, even as full-time employees, like what we can and can't do outside, which I can't really go into the details, but it's very strict, unfortunately.
Depends on the company.
Yeah, but it's worth it because the company's awesome.
Yeah.
So you just make that sacrifice. You're like, I can go with this because I want to work here and I love what we're making. So.
Nick.
Have there ever been, what are projects or parts of projects where you've run into a wall creatively. How did you get over those? And, yeah.
That's a good question. I hire other people to take over that work that's not as fun to do.
I delete. This is a true story. I shift delete the Pro Tools session. Like seriously, when I hit the brick wall of like, man, this is all crap, and I'm trying to like, I feel like I'm actually lost. I will permanently nuke the Pro Tools session because otherwise I just get in a loop of crazy. Yeah, I keep going. I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is the sound, and then I realized that was the sound I had in there 6 revisions ago. Yeah, I just nuke it and start over, and or do something totally different. Like if I'm failing at a gun sound, I will go do footsteps for 3 days, and just kind of clean the palette. But I am a big fan of delete it for real. Like just get rid of it forever, and start over. That's my palette cleanser. Yeah, like seriously, I will just nuke things. Sorry.
I don't really just hire other people to do the. So let's say you're in that. I do kind of like the delete thing, but I also will put extreme limitations on things. So it's like, okay, I've got to get over this one sound. Let me do this in 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, whatever it turns out to be, that's what gets delivered. And you deliver it, and as long as it's my fail fast, fail quick, fail often kind of mantra of just throw stuff out there, it's probably going to suck. They might like it. You never know.
In the last 10 months, 6 months of project, 10 minutes is like, that's tops for sound design.
So you do 10 minutes, or you switch it around and do other kind of limitations like, okay, let me try to make this sound, and all I'm going to use is frog croaks. And what can I come up with? Can I make a gun sound out of frog croaks? Which you can. I've done it.
Yeah, no, seriously, the finding weird source is great.
You don't have blocks.
When I create something, I'll make variations already. And I'll just take a few and work with them. If I don't like it, I'll just move on to the next one, variation, and work on that. And I'll get really frustrated like Mark, and I'll just delete it all and start over. So.
Well, when I have blocks, I've got just a huge bank of source. I'm a big source guy. I just constantly making source. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to use this for. It sounds awesome. I'm just going to put this in my source library. I just start going through my source library and listening to stuff. It's kind of like what they said, looking for something unusual that you haven't hit before. And I'm like, oh, and it'll just trigger something like, I think this piece will work. And then you put it in and it just kind of falls together. And you're like, oh my God, there it is. The other thing I do is if I'm working on a sound and I am not having any luck, I'll take a piece of that sound and I'll just run it through my Kima and then it's done. And it's
To piggyback on that, I mess up my metadata and sound. I mess up my metadata and sound miner all the time on purpose. If you're like, wow, I am so tired right now and I'm out of my mind, and that frog croak sounds like a gunshot, I'm gonna label that as a gunshot. And so that comes up when you're working. I don't know if Sound Miner is just a search tool for sounds, but you can put in weird terms. And I have mine. Like I bring mine. I buy the same libraries, but I bring mine from company. I've been at a couple of companies, but I bring mine with me because my metadata is so incredibly, like, no one in their right mind would ever understand what's going on with my Sound Miner searches. Yeah.
You win. Mark wins that round. Next question. Here we go.
Okay, mine's kind of about communication, working on a team. So when you're working for someone who doesn't really know that much about audio and they don't really have a lot of time or interest in giving lots of support to you on that, do you have some strategies for how you make sure that you're actually working on things that they're going to like?
Wow. It's got dark.
I would call that a real world question. I mean, that is. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, are there things that you would make sure to ask for at the beginning, like help clarify that, or is there a process that you try and stick to communication?
for me, end goal. Like, always know what it is that you're after, feel-wise, design-wise. Not, I want it to sound cool or I want it to sound a certain way, but feel-wise. And I want it to feel visceral when, I want it to feel important when I hit something, or I want to feel a visceral reaction in VFX and sound and everything. Include it all as a part of the player's feedback and not as an audio-centric idea, I guess.
So are you in a group right now? Is that what's going on?
But yeah, I'm working on a film, doing music, and so I was just kind of some of the things I've encountered in this experience. It's a very short-term project, but the goals were not exactly. I think they were sort of, creating things as they went along themselves. So, different kind of objectives and achieved slightly as we've gone along. Yeah.
So it's just for that project, not a full-time employment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just for this one, but I'm assuming that this is something that comes up relatively regularly.
Yeah, you just got to keep going until you find a company or a group that fits together, because I have run into that where they don't care. They want it one way, and it's not going to work out. You just got to keep going and get through that, and hopefully next projects are a better fit, where you are friends with the programmer, you get along with him, you could bribe him with booze and stuff like that. I don't know.
And we have a very good working relationship within the audio department at ID, and nothing's ever assigned. We kind of start the morning and we're saying, here's the things that are up for grabs. Who wants to do what? And everybody jumps in and is like, I want that, I want that. And that's kind of how we do things. So everybody's already passionate about what we're grabbing. Sometimes you do things you don't want to do, like cut VO. But that's just a necessary evil. You give that to the junior and that's fine. So, and then we have morning meetings, and even if audio is not part, like on the talking point for those meetings, I always have an audio person at those meetings, because you're going to hear something that's going to come down the line. I'm probably not answering your question. That's going to come down the line, and so you're going to be able to be prepared for that. And then when you go to work with that person, you're already on the same page, and you're in line, I guess.
No, I think you nailed it. That's it. It's making sure it's my stupid interview catchphrase joke about you're making the game, not your game thing. That's always it. And you just have to get inside the head of whoever you're working with. And Watson, I agree with what you're saying. You have to find the right company and the right fit. But sometimes even just within a project or a week or a day or whatever, you have to find your groove with that person, and you have to figure out what it is that they're after. We've all had, especially if you're making music or you're making a gun sound, you can talk about that until you want to kill yourself. Or you can just keep iterating and try and get inside the head of and figure out what it is that this non-audio person is after. That's a big thing, is figuring out how other disciplines communicate is really important. Because we all talk, we were all eating before we came here, and the conversation that we had was no one would know what the hell we were talking about. You have to learn how to talk to every other discipline. Animators are. Any animators here? Nope. Okay, good. Animators are man, it's a whole different. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. One more. We probably have one more here, I think. Yeah, maybe two.
So many of the programs to write music with, I'm very familiar with, Pro Tools and Logic.
You don't write music with Pro Tools. You don't. Nobody does.
That's not true.
Nobody does. Nobody does it.
Pro Tools is really
Very familiar with a lot of the programs like Finale, Sibelius, using VNS sound libraries and Max MSP and things like that. Are there other programs that you guys are using today that I should be more familiarized with?
Oh yeah. For music? Well, I'm not going to say for music, but Reaper is for me for sound design is the bomb.
You might as well talk politics up here right now. You're going to go down the line. Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, the tools don't matter. It's how you use the tools, how you use them. I've got Mick Gordon, who did the amazing soundtrack for for Doom, as well as Killer Instinct, as well as Wolfenstein. He uses Fruity Loops. Seriously.
True story.
I guess what I want to kind of piggyback off that was are there any programs that you, as audio, or any of the audio designers up here, are there any programs that you disencourage using? As in ones that you probably have more problems with?
Pro Tools.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking honestly. We're talking politics now. Like we will.
I've got the mic.
We all like we have some Pro Tools users, SoundForge, Pro Tools. That's it. That's all you need. And then we have Reaper and whatever weird other shit you use. Mach 5.
Mach 5 is amazing, dude. It's amazing. The granular synth in Mach
tools
5.
are paintbrushes, man.
Yeah.
As long as if you feel a composer's confident in anything like that, you're okay with
And
that.
it also depends on what you're doing, right? So if we're doing films, you're probably going to go DP.
Hans Zimmer uses.
You could use Cubase. Yeah, you're going to use
Like-
Logic. I mean, John Powell uses Logic.
They're
He's
all
awesome.
tools. It's
Yeah.
whatever you're comfortable with.
John Williams, he uses a piano. What the hell is that?
I would actually encourage using stuff that you don't know, because then it makes
Yeah.
it creative. When I sit down to write my own electronic weird music that I do, a lot of times I'll sit down with synths and I'll make patches that I know are like, this is impossible to put into a song, and then I figure out how to do it, because it makes me think in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And for me lately, I'm such a software guy, I branched into modular synths and building modular synths because it makes me think about the signal flow in a completely different way. Well, I mean, a same way, but different, if that makes sense. So that's been really fun. I like to change it up and make myself think.
That's a huge thing, though. It's just the logic flow, right? All of us have things we do. I fix guitar amps, like old, tube amps, and I build pedals and modular synths, and Watson builds guns. I don't know it. But the logic flow stuff is, that's problem solving is 80% of what we do. Logic problem solving. Anyway, that has nothing to do with music. Sorry.
It does, though.
It's not what you want. It's how you use what you have. Years ago, a long time ago, I had a friend who was using Sonar, and he sent me this track that he wrote. It was amazing. I said, "What did you use?" He said, "Sonar." I'm like, "Wow, it sounded great."
Sonar is underrated, too.
Sonar is good. We've written some albums using Sonar. Did use Cakewalk before that. So it's how you use what you have. You don't have to buy Pro Tools if you can't afford it. You can use Fruity Loops, FL Studios. It's called.
Whatever you're fast with.
Yeah, fast sounds good. You can make changes. Again, if you're going to write music for a game, you will make changes. Just expect that. Right? Don't take it personally. It's what they want.
If I'm creating a reel, how long should a reel be?
If it's good,
If
it's really good, like 30 seconds, and I'm like, bring them in for an interview. To be totally honest with you, man, like if you're awesome, if it's really good, 30 seconds, a minute and a half. If it's, 3 minutes. If it's good, it doesn't matter.
Lead with your best.
Yeah.
Don't
doesn't
build
matter.
up to it either. 'Cause
Yeah.
you'll be like,
Yeah, I'm not interested in like the progression to where. And that sounds terrible. I sound like such.
No, it's true.
It's horrible.
Just get to the point.
Get to the point. Like if it's good, it's good. It doesn't matter how long it is. I've had 10-minute demo, 30-second demo. I'm not gonna watch. I can guarantee you, I'm not gonna watch 10 minutes. Even, I'm gonna call you for an interview before that's over or not. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really.
we had a demo from Jesper Kid,
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. He's awesome. But I just put on my iPod and just listened.
That's it. Like.
Yeah.
Brian C. We just hired a guy. The trailer he sent me, he redid the trailer. Like I was saying, he redid the trailer I did. The first 3 seconds of it, just the hit into the ambience that he did, I was like, I'm gonna call him. Like I mean, I literally that fast. It was just the way the logo splashed into the trailer. That was it. I knew immediately. Okay, I'm gonna call this guy.
That's
And it sounds stupid, but I mean it's that fast usually. But-
No, that's absolutely. and you're going for the feeling. It's not, hey, look at the cool thing I can do. You can do the simplest thing, but it works perfectly. And you're like, oh man, he gets it. He
I think
gets the
his was
feeling.
2
Yeah.
sound library sounds. That was it. I hired him off
And
of
it
his
nailed it.
placement of 2 purchased library sounds.
Next time I need a job, man, I'm gonna send you.
You know what I mean? Like, but you know what I mean? It's all about how you can't we can't watch the Discovery Channel without hearing the same 18 million songs that we all use all the time, even if we pretend that we don't because we pitch shifted it.
It's an octave, whole octave changes it.
I ran mine through Kima, but that's cool.
You pitch shifted, you amateur.
Anybody else?
Any more? One more?
Let me just say,
No, you take.
I like sure. I'm a microphone junkie. How many of you guys prefer to have music that's, that a composer wants to work for you guys? Do you want it seen, heard with a trailer, like a trailer, or do you want the music by itself?
visual versus-
Yeah, you want visual or just double click and.
For that's really hard. That's a hard question to answer. If I'm looking for something specific and they do it to what I want them to do it for, or something in the vibe of, I like that, but I don't know. Both.
Yeah, I think both. It's what he said, splunge. Yeah. I mean, I like looking at visuals, obviously, but sometimes I can get lost in like, oh man, what game is this? And then forget about the music. But if a piece of music can capture you without the visuals, then that's even better. So.
Be honest. Have any of us at this table ever hired a composer based on a blind, like they sent me a reel and I'm like, oh my god, this music's amazing?
No. Honestly, we already know, like you said earlier, we already know who we want.
Yeah.
Like, I have people come to me and they're like, for the next project, who do you want? And I'm like, this person and maybe a split thing or whatever. And they're like, okay, we'll contact them.
And like I have people send me things very specific for specific games. Like I want to do music for this game. People trying to get your job. I want to do music for Vietnam, which is coming up. I've had multiple people send me things that are like, I want to do music for this. And they send me a piece of music, but no one sends me anything like, check it out. Here's my combat intensities. Here's my. They're not at all putting it into the context of the game.
So you're saying if they had?
I hell, The good news is no one has.
But this is the issue with hiring Hollywood people too, because they're not necessarily thinking in that direction. Whereas like Mick delivered everything in amazing Pro Tool or Wise ready to go. It saved us so much time. It was like, here's the stems. It's all already integrated into Wise. We're like, amazing.
And that's where I go back to earlier when I was telling you, like, understand the tech, understand the lingo. Like, I mean, that's huge. Like that to me, I know now I'm not gonna have to fight a 6-month battle to explain why the violins have to work with just the whatever in order to make dynamic music work. Yeah. So, oh Jesus.
All right, that's 8:00. We did our time. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you. Yeah.
With hands this is my beats.
Yeah. I really do truly want to extend my thanks to this group of people. No one said I want to be a producer in games, or I make beats and I want to be in games. So. There are no producers this year.